often. Can you repeat this sentence for yourself in silence? I can do better. I just in silence for yourself. I can do better this time. I can do better next time. These are the three sentences kind of help you to motivate yourself, kind of allow you to ask yourself, when is it that you say yes and when do you say no? When is it that you feel like you're not motivated anymore? Are you so motivated that you want to kind of repeat this phrase back and forth? I can do better. I can do better this time, and I can do better next time. As I said in the introductions of the Mass, Matthew chapter 21, Jesus entering into the temple of Jerusalem. It's a day of great joy where God's people welcome him with palm branches. But also in the beginning of journey where Jesus confronting the scribes and the Pharisees in the way that they practice their faith, in the way that they carry out the traditions of the church. And so, before we lead into this parables of the two sons, Jesus is already cleansing the temple, saying to everyone, this house shall be called a house of prayers, not a den of thieves. He's also being challenged by the scribes and Pharisees. What authorities allow you to do all these things in the temple? And that's when Jesus gave that whole example. By whose authority John the Baptist baptized? By God or by his own will? So today then we turn to these parables that Matthew is addressing to the scribes and Pharisees, Jesus addressing to the scribes and Pharisees. Can you re-examine your yes in your life? And why do you say no in your life? And also a moment for us to kind of ask yourself, what motivates you to do that? As we witness here our young man to receive communion, the first communion and the confirmation. What motivates you to continue to say yes to God? I want to be fully initiated in the life of the church. Allowing us to see what's happening in your journey. So Paul also then, in his letter to Philippians this morning, what motivates us to live, whether as a family, to work together as a community, and to belong in the church? So he said there are two options here. Complete my joy of being of the same mind, with the same love, united in heart, thinking one thing. And the other opposite is this: do nothing out of selfishness or out of vainglory. So what will be your choice? What will motivate you to say that I want to create this community of same mind and same love and united in heart? But before we step into that question, let's look back again to these parables of the two sons. Let's go back to the world, the cultures of Jesus where he lived in and grew up, to our Middle Eastern cultures. The parable said this first son is to be commended, even though his verbal word said, I will not do, but he carried out God's will ultimately. But yet in the middle cultures during Jesus' time, honor and respect is everything. To display that honor and respect, sometimes wants to go through great struggles to protect one's shame. So because during that time of culture thinking, they would actually say the second son is to be honored. The second son has a better choice because he protected the image for his father and would not disrespect him publicly. And you may agree, you may disagree, but that's the cultures that Jesus is trying to challenge those in leadership. We also see in these parables of the two sons of the ideal and the real. Sometimes we place a lot of expectation. This is the ideal of my life. This is the ideal of my world. This is the ideal of my church, but the reality is here. How do we close the gaps between the ideal and the real? Do I lower my ideal to match up with my reality? Or do I higher my reality to meet up to my ideal? We of a Western mind, at least in my generations and prior generations, I don't know about the younger generations. Sometimes when we believe in the ideal can be really strong and profound. And if the reality do not match that ideal, we would challenge that reality. And sometimes also what happens if the reality close the gap to the ideal. But if your ideal is wrong, you can disagree the reality. And that is the danger we are falling into. That's why at the end of the 20th century, and we're living in the 21st century, we see so many reality shows. Different reality shows help you to see this is what's happening. At least they painted a picture. This is how relationships are living. This is how people know each other and date each other and live with each other. What happened with the reality show is we are moving toward a generation that said we need to lower the ideal to match up with reality. So morality is blurry and gray. And that's the dangers with reality show in this day and age. Sometimes we need to hold on to that ideal and challenge a generation to move their reality to match up to the ideal. And not just to use the excuses. Freedom is what motivates me to live in my reality and forget the ideal. So let us re-examine in this parables, in that whole context. Where is your mindset? How do you motivate yourself? We're living in the pandemic situations. Whether we're young or old, sometimes we can lose that motivation. We don't want to get out of the bed. We don't want to get out of bed and do something for yourself. And that's why that statement is so important when I ask you to say to yourself, I can do better. I can do better this time, I can do better next time. Can I help to motivate you in moments when you feel like, everything around me is just collapsing. My ideal world is also collapsing. So psychologists kind of re-examine what causes people to lose their motivations. One is maybe their ideal is too high. They set a goal too large. Their ideal of changing societies. If I cannot find a job to that ideal, I'm just going to stay at home. So maybe when we lose that motivation, we need to re-examine your plan, your purpose, your objective. Second, maybe loss of confidence. That loss of confidence also causes you to lose your motivation in the way that you want to move forward. And you can't. And some of us, maybe, and I've gone through it, sometimes we've gone through jobs and interview after interviews, we can't find a job. And we get discouraged. And that loss of confidence is also very hard to move out. So in motivation, then, we look at what is extrinsic outside of us. Who are the circumstances? Who are the people that can pull me out when I lose that confidence? In line with loss of confidence, it could also be procrastinations. You and I have that problem. Sometimes we just need to send that letter. We need to make that resumes and send it out. And a click of a button and email out. But we just procrastinate. I'll do it tomorrow. And become next week, and become next month, and become a year or more. The other side, that may not happen to all of us, but it could happen. When we lose motivation because we expect the ideal and we call it perfectionist. I will not get this job until this situation happens. That perfection becomes so high, especially with the millennial generations or future generations. I expect when I get hired, I'm going to change the world today, not tomorrow. And so that perfectionist ideology can also affect your loss of motivations. And the final one will be very difficult to deal with when you lose your motivation, that has to do with depressions. And sometimes that is very difficult to deal. And sometimes then that you need to go into what we call it the intrinsic part of the motivations. So in the intrinsic part of motivation, there are three categories: self-talk, imagery, and then if and then conditions. In self-talk, as far as intrinsic motivation for yourself, when you lose your confidence, is to go through this whole ideas of saying to yourself in this whole context, is a person inner dialogue, whether it's an outcome or a process. Imagery is you imagine yourself, you're going through an interview, you're meeting a supervisor or manager for a position, and you rehearse through it. How would I react if this question were to happen? In a way to motivate yourself. And the third is the if and then. If answer A happens to come up, then I'll answer it this way. If answer this A doesn't come up, then I'll move forward to answer B. More or less plan A, plan B, and plan C as a way to motivate yourself. So psychologists come to a conclusion that self-talk is the best way to motivate ourselves. For example, in the outcomes, many of younger generation play games. Xbox, Nintendo, whatever that game may be on social media. One of the ways to self-motivate yourself is the outcome. I can beat the score. I can beat this high score and become the next high score. And that's how you self-talk and motivate yourself. And in the process then, I can react better next time. For those of us who are adult and driving, sometimes people cut us in front of our lanes and we scream and yell, we curse. But if we say, I can do better, I can react better next time, instead of blurting out that words, maybe you just kind of find that inner peace. So that self-talk has to do with process. But the one danger is sometimes we go through, we play the victim's card and blame people. And that's what we heard in Ezekiel. And this is what the people of God has to say. The Lord's way is not fair. Fairness then become something that you always ask yourself and challenge people. Fairness or not fair, then you said, I am the victim. In all the situation, you caused me to become like this. In that negative self-talk, you're not motivating yourself, but you are putting yourself as a victim card and pointing fingers to other people. And that's very dangerous. So let's go forward and kind of repeat yourself. And I too, in moments when I lose motivations, or when we do have motivation, want to acquire more, is to say together in silence, I can do better. I can do better this time. And I can do better next time.